Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today we are talking even more about The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time Remake. This project has been theorized about by myself and others for years. It's also been rumored for some time, and it's now been widely reported over the last few months by a few different reputable outlets. And with the most recent happenings, the belief in this project has become even stronger. My confidence in this happening is stronger than it ever has been before. And so we're going to be talking about why this confidence in this project is so strong. But we're also going to be extending further here, and perhaps this is going to be the more interesting part to the conversation, the implications by recent announcements on just how big of a deal this project is going to be. There's been some debate as to how ambitious this remake is going to be. We've heard that there's a big budget behind it, we've heard that it's supposed to be a full remake, but what do those things actually mean? Well, with the recent announcement of Star Fox, it might be painting a very, very compelling picture here, especially when you consider other things we've talked about in the past, such as some patents Nintendo has filed that do suggest Nintendo is going back to the drawing board here for Ocarina of Time and creating something that in a lot of ways is going to feel really, really new, and, well, that could be extremely awesome. So that's what we're getting into this time. Now, before diving into it all I'm going to ask of you is that you sit back, watch, listen through, and let me know what you think at the end of the video in the comments below. So here's a brief summary of the many reasons why we believe the Ocarina of Time remake is happening and is coming this year. Firstly, Nintendo usually has something major Zelda or Mario in terms of the mainline 3D adventure games early on for every generation. And even when Mario has come first, Zelda has usually not been that far behind. It may not always be a totally brand new game, but it's at least going to be an exciting new reworking. But Nintendo's already remastered all the different Zelda games. At this point, remaking makes a lot more sense, especially when you consider the standards of today. You look at what Capcom does with the Resident Evil games, you look at what Square Enix does with the Final Fantasy games. And at some point, Nintendo's also going to need to figure out a way to keep Zelda more consistent, because the development cycles of the 3D Zelda games have been getting longer and longer, and waiting 6 to 8 years between every Zelda game just isn't good for business. So like Capcom, like Square Enix, it might make more sense to create a third pillar of Zelda. You have your open air Zeldas, you have your 2D Zeldas, and perhaps you also have your ambitious 3D remake Zeldas. So while that may make some good business sense, is there any evidence to suggest that Nintendo chose to go in this direction? Well, as we have seen with Nintendo's cross-promotional strategies, there are usually some signs leading up to a bigger announcement. Nintendo likes to put out smaller things. Like for Pikmin, we saw Pikmin in the Universal Park, we saw the Pikmin 3 Deluxe, we saw Pikmin Bloom, that led to Pikmin 4. Or in the case of Donkey Kong Bonanza, Donkey Kong was in the movie, they had the Donkey Kong Park expansion, they had Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, we got Donkey Kong Bonanza. We've seen several examples of Nintendo doing things like that, and so you look at what's going on with Zelda, we have the live-action movie coming out next year, we've seen that it is sporting Green Tunic Link, they're going back to that iconic look. Nintendo has now put out multiple Ocarina of Time Lego sets, and we've even seen a patent where they're exploring around what appears to be the Forest Temple with portraits of one of the Poe sisters that has a fairy navigating the screen. Why would Nintendo be going back to a patent exploring around something like this for Ocarina of Time? Maybe because they've been working on something a little bit more ambitious for Ocarina of Time. But then we also have the history of the Zelda series producer teasing future Zelda projects. He's done this several times, and he's even confirmed it himself in the case of Link's Awakening. And we actually have 3 different interviews where it appears that he has been teasing at a Zelda project, 2 of which were clearly for Ocarina of Time. The Game Informer one where there was a no comment thing about a modern remake, even though he could have denied it as he has denied other things like a Zelda Dungeon Maker. And then there was also the Nintendo Dream Magazine one where he talked about fans not really knowing who Raru is in this modern era from Ocarina of Time, suggesting that fans would need to learn about it. And then more recently, he's implied that internal Nintendo has been working on something big for Switch 2 on Zelda to come out relatively soon after Age of Imprisonment, which came out last holiday. And it is Zelda's 40th anniversary, and usually around the summertime, in the big 5-year increments, Nintendo does make announcements for the anniversaries, and there's always some kind of release, perhaps even more. And then we have so many different rumors from different places. We have rumors from Nash Weedle, we have reports from Video Games Chronicle, we've heard from Nate the Hate, who's proven to be very reliable, and he's talked about how we're getting a full Ocarina of Time remake, and he reported on many things to happen during the summertime, and several of which have been confirmed. Splatoon Raiders coming out in the summer in July, and Star Fox being announced and coming out in June, and looking really good visually, and having online play, and following the classic format. All of that has been confirmed. And by the way, also Nash Weedle had teased this even before Nate the Hate's podcast, who has also talked about the Ocarina of Time remake. And then we also have Special Nick, who is shown to be pretty reputable, at least when it comes to Nintendo things, and he's also heard about this project having a really big budget. And so we have multiple sources that have a history of getting things correct, not necessarily everything, but recently the Star Fox stuff has been confirmed, and this Ocarina of Time remake stuff came alongside that information. And so all the stars seem to be aligning, the leaks seem to be proving true. A lot of this big story about Nintendo Switch 2's lineup for 2026 is continually getting confirmed. And so yes, my confidence in this project is continually growing, and it's been very high for a very long time. But yes, there has still been this question of just how big of a deal this remake is going to be. Some people will argue that maybe Nintendo will just do kind of like what they did with Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 last year, and just kind of take the most recent entry like Ocarina of Time 3D and upscale it to HD as if it was like a Dolphin emulation or something like that. I've talked about this before, and I think that would be an extremely poor business decision. I think that would be in bad taste. I do not think that would be good for the brand. I think the timeliness of this would just not be good, especially because we do need something ambitious Zelda soon. Double especially if something ambitious 3D Mario related is not ready soon either, which also, according to reports, is not coming out until 2027. So if all these reports are proving true, and 3D Mario is not coming out this year, Nintendo is going to definitely need something to be a big deal this year, especially considering what we've recently learned about the sales situation. So Nintendo has officially announced, because of the current economic climate, the conditions, yeah, like every other video game system out there, they're going to have to increase the price for the Switch 1 and the Switch 2. Here in the United States, Switch 2 is going up $50. Naturally, this will likely impact sales. However, this will not go into effect until September 1st, so if you've been on the fence about picking up a Nintendo Switch 2, you have until September 1st if you want to get it before the price increase. And while Nintendo has confirmed that the Switch 2 in 10 months has sold 19.86 million units, which is incredible, record-breaking numbers here, they are also anticipating a drop in sales for this next upcoming fiscal year, 16.5 million. Likely because of the price increase, but they're going to need to do something to make sure the sales still maintain even at that level. You're gonna need some kind of killer app. We even heard from Special Nick that the Ocarina of Time remake is gonna come out alongside a special Zelda-themed Switch 2, and I'm sure that will help. But I assume also that would come out after the price increase. And so basically, they're going to need this Ocarina of Time remake to be a big deal, not just a simple entry, something that's going to get people to want to buy a Switch 2, something that's going to showcase the future of what Zelda is going to look like, something that's going to excite people for the movie, and something that people will want to go back to after watching the movie. They need their holiday headliner. And so an ambitious remake for Ocarina of Time does make the most sense. We go back to the patent I mentioned earlier. If they're literally creating patents for a project like this, that goes to show that they are rethinking how this game is going to work with the hardware. This is not just like, hey, we're going to take an old game and remaster it again. Now, maybe that doesn't seem very believable to you, but you look at what Nintendo has just done with Star Fox. That's Star Fox, which is priced at $50 digitally, a budget release by a decent margin. Do you think Nintendo is going to go for a budget release for their holiday headliner? I don't think so. And this new Star Fox game looks incredible graphically. Like, yes, they've essentially remade Star Fox 64 again, But graphically, it looks incredible. In a lot of ways, people feel like this might be the best looking Nintendo-made game for Switch 2 so far. There's a debate to be had there, but the point is, it's stellar, it's beautiful, it's been made to look like a modern game. There is already some examples of Nintendo doing things like this for some of their remasters. You look at Metroid Prime Remastered, you look at Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. Nintendo has done some ambitious visual reworkings, and they've even done some for some of their 2D entries as well. But for a 3D game, to see Nintendo go this far visually, I would say that bodes really well for what they could do for Ocarina of Time, where I think they would go even further. There's actually been a lot of discussion that Monolith Soft would be heavily involved with this project. We've actually seen a recent interview where the Zelda team talks about how they want Monolith Soft to be even more involved with Zelda. Monolith Soft is one of Nintendo's other developers. They are responsible for the Xenoblade games, but also they've been co-developing a lot of other Nintendo titles such as Animal Crossing, Splatoon, and Zelda, Skyward Sword, Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom. And from recent interviews, we've actually learned that Monolith Soft was heavily involved with a lot of design choices for Tears of the Kingdom. And so Monolith Soft, who already has a history of doing some ambitious remasters that are on the borderline of remakes with a lot of new content, they might be involved with this Ocarina of Time remake project. We've actually heard, this is a rumor, take it with a grain of salt, especially considering that this person hasn't gotten everything right, but they've also gotten some pretty big things right recently. That's Nash Weedle. He has also reported that Monolith Soft is involved with the remake project. Now, we've also heard from Special Nick that it's not just internal Nintendo, that there will also be an external party, so there could be someone else involved here. But if Monolith Soft is truly involved, that may spell for some pretty good things. But just as an example of things that Nash Weedle's been getting right, he did tease the Star Fox thing, but also, going back to October of last year, he was talking about how Nintendo was experimenting with using new camera technology and integrating it into game chat, and what did we see with Star Fox recently? That new technology they've been working with having to do with facial features. Like, to be more clear, here he said, avatars can be created that replace your image and reproduce your gestures through motion capture. It will be used for game chat, and games will be able to take advantage of it. Mario carping your gestures, and like literally, they show with Star Fox that the camera that you attach to your Switch 2 can literally see your facial expressions and map that to the avatars you put in there. So like you can see Fox, and you can see his eyes and eyebrows twitch, his mouth move around, his head turn. There's some very interesting stuff going on there. And this technology was leaked by Nash a few months ago, just kind of adding to the fact that, yeah, he does hear about things. Doesn't mean he gets everything right. He did talk about the Direct a couple months ago that didn't happen. But it does seem like sometimes he gets some correct sources, and we've at least heard in terms of Star Fox stuff, he's been accurate, and a lot of this Star Fox stuff has also come alongside the Ocarina of Time remake stuff. Anyways, this brings me back to the Star Fox stuff again, because the Star Fox stuff is not just the remake. We talk about this facial feature stuff. Nintendo went above and beyond with this Star Fox thing. I don't think it's fair to call it just a remake. Like, yes, the campaign has been remade visually, but there's also some reimaginings here, because they've also included all these new ambitious cutscenes that are happening in between all the missions that were not a part of the original release or any of the remasters or reimaginings beforehand. This is all new stuff that's telling new things about the world of Star Fox, the characters. So we're getting a significantly expanded story here. Like, we got to see this incredible prologue to end the Direct on Star Fox, and seeing this level of scope and ambition to tell the narrative of Star Fox here, seeing Nintendo have a willingness to do this for a quote-unquote budget title, it gives me more confidence that Nintendo's going to do something like that for the Ocarina of Time remake as well. We've talked about how it seems likely that they're going to use voice acting this time, that they're going to add some more of a narrative focus, really sell the story of Ocarina of Time, which I think actually has one of the better stories in the Zelda series. And with modern technology, they can certainly do a much better job of portraying that. And so even if Nintendo just goes to the extent of what they've done with Star Fox here, we could be looking at an Ocarina of Time remake that visually would be a modern 3D Zelda game on Switch 2, which we have not seen before, could look incredible, perhaps 4K 60 FPS, or at least 1440p 60 FPS like the Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom Switch 2 editions, but with modern levels of detail, and some very cinematic cutscenes that feel like they might be right out of a movie. If that's all this remake is, that's still fantastic. But this Star Fox thing also does employ new technology. We mentioned the game chat avatar stuff, but they've done more with the multiplayer, the online. They're changing things there. They're integrating mouse controls. They're integrating dual Joy-Cons for cooperative play. There's a whole challenge mode thing, which adds a whole other layer to experiencing the missions in Star Fox, and they're giving us various difficulties that are separate from the branching paths of the campaign. So just from what's been confirmed so far of this Star Fox game, there's actually a lot of new different things in this package on top of just it being an incredibly remade campaign with new reimagined story elements and such. With this level of effort, there could be new stuff in the Ocarina of Time remake. Like, the 3DS remaster did have a boss rush mode. They could perhaps go back to that. They could perhaps add a Master Quest. These are possibilities, but maybe they're going to think more so about just improving the actual adventure itself. Like, I would actually compare this Star Fox game to be something along the lines of what we've seen from Capcom, the Resident Evil 2, 3, and 4 remakes. It's not exactly the same, but there are certainly similarities there. A decent amount of new content to enjoy that's totally modern, while retelling the story in a modern way with completely modern visuals. From that perspective, these projects are similar, and them doing that for Ocarina of Time Remake, I do think would suggest that we could be looking at changes to the actual world. And we've talked about some of these changes in this series I'm doing, the Changes series, where I'm going through different parts of Ocarina of Time and looking at things that could change, like in the Deku Tree, in Death Mountain, Hyrule Field, Castle Town. Like, we're talking about maybe having like a fully controllable camera, a seamless world without loading screens, like you just walk into Castletown without things fading in or out, or Kakariko Village, or the Lost Woods. And on the note of the Lost Woods, like, it wouldn't just be a whole bunch of squares you're stepping through, but an actual fully connected forest. And so them doing that would definitely make for this being a pretty exciting experience, wouldn't it? And if they expand the field and add a few more missions and side quests and different things to do in the world and revamp the combat as well, like, we could be looking at something so special here. And that's just considering them giving it a similar level of effort to what they've done with Star Fox here, but I'm kind of anticipating they're going to go another step further, because this is going to be, from what we're understanding, the headline release for the holidays based off the recent reports. And so the doubts and reservations about this Ocarina of Time Remake project are continually dispelled. The idea that Nintendo wouldn't do an ambitious remake like this, we've already seen them do it quite recently with Star Fox. The idea that these recent reports that are coming from credible outlets might somehow be wrong or leak bait in some way, well, these reports are continually proving true. And the idea, based off history, that Nintendo wants to bring something special here early on for Switch 2 to sell hardware, to appease the Zelda fan base, and also have something cool to play in lead up during all the promotion to the live-action Zelda movie. We've seen them do that before, and now it seems more plausible than ever before. So in short, I am getting more hyped, more excited. I have more belief than ever before that this is truly going to be a full, ambitious, big budget remake for The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. And also, I wouldn't be surprised if this is just the beginning of other remakes to come later down the road to help bridge the gaps between the other Zelda releases. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. And if you've gone this far and you find yourself enjoying my videos and haven't subscribed already, I would very much appreciate your subscription. But this is AndresRestart, and I will see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.